Manchester City has filed a lawsuit against the Premier League over the new rules introduced in December 2021 and revised in January 2024, which govern related party transactions, RPTs. A court will hear the case on the 10th of June, and a decision is expected within 2 weeks after that date. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay updated with all the Manchester City news. According to The Times, which reviewed the 165-page document submitted by Manchester City, owned by the Abu Dhabi United Group, the club argues that these regulations violate UK competition law. The team is also seeking monetary damages on the grounds that it has been forced to comply with these rules for years, leading to revenue losses. If the court rules in favour of Manchester City, the impact could be significant, as club owners would be free to inject as much money as they want into their teams through sponsorship deals. Theoretically, clubs could acquire all the best players in the world if they were rich enough and didn't mind incurring losses year after year. This would alter the European hierarchy since many clubs are some type of non-profit organization, e.g., Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Barcelona, and Borussia Dortmund, or are controlled by funds that eventually need to show some return to their investors or shareholders, e.g., Chelsea, Milan, and Manchester United. In reality, this would eliminate cost controls and make the business as a whole less attractive to investors, especially at a time when the trend is in the opposite direction, with most leagues and UEFA, the governing body of European football, instituting regulations aimed at promoting sustainability. It would also be a severe blow to the Premier League's case against Manchester City regarding the 115 alleged violations of the league's financial rules, as many relate to supposedly inflated sponsorships, which would no longer be prohibited. Additionally, there is the simple fact that the most successful member of the most successful league, not just in football but in sports, is preparing to challenge the very institution of which it is a part. This puts football in completely new and uncharted territory. So, to mitigate the effects and doubts, we have prepared a questionnaire explaining the case. So, what is this related party transaction business? A related party is an entity that has some sort of relationship with the club or its owner. This became an issue since the financial fair play rules, which limit the amount of losses a team can incur over a certain period, came into effect in 2011. Why not? Well, because Tesla and Tottenham would be considered related parties, since a single person or entity, Musk, in this case, exercises significant control, as the Premier League puts it, over both of them. Therefore, they would not simply be making straightforward business decisions but manipulating a deal between two entities from different sectors to benefit one of them. The hypothetical Tesla-Tottenham sponsorship would be a related party transaction, RPT, meaning it would be subject to something called fair market value. Just as if Musk owned, say, Astana, a team in Kazakhstan, and Tottenham, he couldn't have his Kazakh team buy Oliver Skip for $100 million, approximate £79 million, to boost the English club's revenue. That deal would also be subject to fair market value, and Skip, to be fair, is probably not worth £79 million. Who decides what is fair market value? There are specialized companies that assess the value of the deal relative to other similar deals at comparable clubs. For example, if Arsenal, a club of comparable size to Tottenham in a similarly comparable location, signed a sponsorship deal with Toyota, an unrelated party, with no links to the club or its owners, for $30 million, approximate £24 million, they would use that as a benchmark to evaluate the Tesla deal. And they might conclude that it should count only as £24 million in the club's revenue calculation for sustainability financial rules purposes, such as the Premier League's Profit and Sustainability Regulations, PSR. And City doesn't like this? No, according to the lawsuit, as reported by The Times. They argue that even sponsors with links to their owners, such as Etihad Airways, the main airline of Abu Dhabi, should be free to decide for themselves how much the sponsorship to the club is worth. City also argues that the Premier League has a conflict of interest since it also has sponsors and competes with the clubs for their money and questions how fair market value is assessed. They also argue that the rules inhibit the team's ability to acquire talent and make running their business more expensive, which, in turn, also reported by The Times from these documents, could mean they may have to increase ticket prices or cut spending on youth development, women's football, or community programs. That's why they are also seeking compensation for lost revenue as a result of the fair market value rules that limit how much they could get from their RPTs. The basis is that if the principle of fair market value is deemed, in fact, unfair, then every time in the past that Manchester City respected the fair market value instead of signing larger sponsorships with related parties, it resulted in lost revenue. What would the Premier League say about this? We don't know because they are not commenting on anything so far, and this whole process, like the one concerning the 115 charges against Manchester City, is shrouded in secrecy. That said, the league could point out that these rules were passed in 2021 by a significant majority, 19, with one abstention, of Premier League clubs. Rule changes require at least 14 of the 20 to vote in favour. Going further, being part of the league is voluntary, and if you want to be part of it, you have to follow the rules set by its members. When stricter rules were voted on by Premier League clubs the following month, the vote was 18-2 in favour of these rules. The league could also argue that it is difficult to see how City is being penalised when it has won 6 Premier League titles in the last 7 seasons and made nearly $100 million, approximate £79 million, in profits last season and about $50 million, approximate £39 million, the previous season. Who is on the arbitration panel and how do you think the outcome will be? It will be a panel of 3 legal experts, one chosen by each side, and the third chosen jointly, and I think it all comes down to how they interpret competition law. It seems that if you remove the concept of fair market value from RPTs, you give a huge competitive advantage to clubs with wealthy owners who are happy to bankroll losses through inflated sponsorships or dubious multi-club ownership deals. You also make it much harder for everyone else to keep up and run a profitable and sustainable business, which is what the Premier League, and its 20 members, are trying to do. On the other hand, while theoretically, this could have a big impact on the Premier League, I'm not sure to what extent City, or any other club, would necessarily abuse the system. Why is this happening? Well, if you want to play in UEFA competitions, you will still have to obey the entity's rules. And they have fair market value principles to evaluate sponsorship deals. So even if City wins, I doubt we will suddenly see a $1 billion sponsorship from Etihad, although this could mean they could be sponsored for $500 million, it's approximate £397 million, and sign Kylian Mbappé to play in the Premier League. If these rules are removed, those same books would still be evaluated by UEFA as part of participation in those competitions, like the Champions League. That way, they could still determine those deals are inflated under their rules. Most likely, this is aimed at the next case in November, the one with the 115 charges. Many of them relate to sponsorship deals that were allegedly inflated beyond fair market value. And if that is no longer against the rules, it is hard to convict them, even if the rules were in place at the time. Essentially, that is what City is arguing here. In any case, the implications will be far-reaching. How so? The Premier League is nothing more than an association of 20 member clubs, and now you have one of those clubs taking legal action against the others. This is unprecedented on this scale. Part of what allowed the league to thrive and become by far the most successful in the world was that any disputes that arose were resolved internally, and the 20 clubs always presented, externally, at least, a united front. One side will say that it is an extreme measure, that this could destroy the very institutions and structures on which the Premier League was built, that the problem should have been resolved internally, or that City should have left the league and joined another competition with rules they find fair. The other side will argue that City has had enough, they don't trust the league to administer rules fairly and transparently, and it is their right to resolve these issues externally through the courts and go as far as they can within the boundaries of the law. So stay tuned for updates and more insights into this evolving situation with Manchester City and the Premier League.